random, but I've just started watching Game of Thrones, and like, I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
They talk about like the North a lot, and I'm like, okay, right. There's still that divide is still quite quite present in the 21st century, which is quite fun.
Yeah, man. I heard this really sick thing, and I don't know if it's true or not, but you know, in Game of Thrones, they've all got like really strong Northern accents.
Yeah.
Or a lot from Winterfell. I heard that wasn't the original plan, but
really?
they asked Sean Bean to do a different accent, and he said no, I won't. So they got everyone else to do a Sean Bean accent instead. I don't know if that's true, man. Anyone listening would have to fact check that, but that's something I saw it online or heard it somewhere. But I thought that was a sick story, man.
That's like one of those facts you see on like Facebook from Albert Einstein. Like I quoted like a quote that he just did not say, but I'll tell you.
I like the idea of it, so I'm going for it.
Yeah, but anyway, mate. Like honestly, I kind of messaged you yesterday, but I was just like literally sweating out your podcast like yesterday, and the way you come across and like the way you present and you know, for those that know, podcasting is a very hard task, especially from the nature of the topic. But the way, you know, you conduct them, I just think it's brilliant. I was so, you know, in tuned and so just like fascinated by each episode. It was really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Proper Mental podcast, fantastic. Just really, really good stuff, mate. So yeah.
Oh, dude, mate, thank you.
Just trying to soften you up, you know.
It's always nice, man. Like, just that I'm still amazed. I don't know if it's the same for you, but still amazed that anyone fucking listens. Do you know what I mean? Like, if one person says I've listened, I'm like so touched. So yeah, that's lovely. Thank you, mate. I appreciate the listen, and I appreciate those kind words.
You're welcome. That's actually really interesting you say that about, you know, one person listening, and you know that's something I've kind of found myself when I started this journey. You know. It wasn't, for me, it was kind of something to just verbalize and vocalize what it is that I'd gone through. And, you know, you get messages and you get your friends reaching out. And for me, it's amazing to know, you know, your voice and your truth, as, you know, even if it's helped just one person. For me, it's not about numbers. It's not a numbers game. Like, yes, like maybe that feeds into an ego at some point, but it's, you know, you don't do this kind of podcasting for the glory. It's for, you know, helping that one person that who may listen to an episode and think, wow, like I understand that. And so I think it's you know, amazing that the kind of work that we do brings out such authenticity, but like helps people through our voice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. It's, you know, connecting through like shared experience. It's like a really human thing, right? Connecting on a deeper level, and it's not easy to do, and society kind of like presents loads of ways for us to avoid doing it, you know. But I think, you know, like when people do hear those connections, those deeper connections, then people do like that, and it is useful. I certainly find it useful. And like you say, it's never going to be a numbers game. When you talk about the sort of things that we talk about, we're talking about the shit no one wants to talk about, and we're talking about stuff that a lot of people don't even want to listen to, you know. So already, like your listening pool, however you want to say it, is pretty damn small anyway, right? So it's just about like that message where you go, oh, do you know what, like even if someone says to me I really related to it, that's all I want, you know. I don't want to change the world, I don't want to solve your problems, that's not my job, I can't do that. But when someone says, oh mate, like, you know, I felt seen, and you think, yes, sick, that's exactly
that's why you do it, because like you want, you know, something like this is, it's inherently, like I talk about loss quite prolifically, but also do tap into mental health. And as you said, it's an area where, you know, people are like, well, you know, why do I want to talk about something that brings up this sadness? You know, I want to, you know, why would I want to think in that mindset? But it's not like that, because as humans, like, it's a very natural part. It's a human emotion. We feel a million different emotions like each day, and not all of them will be happy. And, you know, to really just verbalize and vocalize what it is, you know, the bad as well as the good, it's just a natural, you know, it's part of the roller coaster that is life. And so I think it's, you know, it's inherently important. I mean, have you noticed, you know, since your podcasting journey, have you noticed, you know, mates of yours being more open with yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And just people in general, you know. So like, I don't have to know someone very well. I can be in the street and just bump into someone like I kind of know, you know, and just stop for a little hello, and within 5 minutes we're getting into it, you know. And I think when it comes to being vulnerable and talking about this stuff, a lot of people want to, and they don't know how, and they don't know how it's going to be received. And there's so much fear and so much stigma around it. And I kind of think it feels a little bit like someone's got to go first. And when one person goes, it's like your friendship group, you know, if you've got a group of mates and you'll knock around together, you've known each other for years, and maybe it's all based on banter, it's all based on football, or the usual like blokey stuff. But then if one person goes first, then someone else will think like, oh, fuck, like that's my chance. This is my opportunity. Look at the response to him. I'm not going to be ridiculed. Everyone's here for him. I need everyone to be here for me. So if one person goes first, and then you find like the floodgates open, man, and people are a lot better at talking about this sort of stuff, you know, particularly men, all the big stats around men. And I think men are better at talking about these sorts of deeper stuff than we get credit for. What men haven't got is the environment to talk about these sorts of things.
I think that is so correct. I think when you provide you provide a setting and you provide like a space for men to feel comfortable. It's not like we don't have this capacity to speak on an empathetic level. It's just the very nature. And I think once you create a foundation and like you said, you initiate that conversation, you start it, you know, others will follow in your footsteps. I think for men, one thing I've realized is it's the starting, it's that initial conversation. How do we first initiate, you know, what it is we're going through? But I think if you take that step, people around you look at you and think, right, you know, this is an opportunity for me to also be open. And that's something I found. I think I'm back to a bit what you said before, and it's about, meeting someone on the street and them having these conversations. I think also in a slightly different thought process, but those deeper, more intimate conversations are so much nicer than just your surface level. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, I love a bit of lads banter, and that's great. Like, you know, it is sometimes my pride and joy, but having that deeper surface level conversation with a mate is, you know, it's something that it's just so appreciated. It's something that just like creates a deeper relationship with friends, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, completely. So I think as humans, we're kind of designed for it, you know, and society, I touched on it before, but society robs us of it. Society is very quick fix. Everything's based around distracting ourselves and taking us away from these deep conversations, but we're designed for it and people appreciate it. And it's how we connect. It's how we grow ourselves, you know, by kind of like talking through these things with other people. It does as much for me when I talk about this stuff as it does for other people. You know, sometimes I almost feel a bit, you know, am I doing it for the right reasons? Because I get so much out of it, you know? And but it's not easy to do, you know? I'm very blessed. Well, blessed is probably the wrong way of saying it, but I find the surface level stuff really, really difficult. So I have a lot of like social anxiety. So if I'm next to someone and they're like, oh, how's the weather? You know, that sort of stuff. I really can't do that. But if that same person, same situation turned around to me and said, oh, you know, does God exist? Boom, I'm on it. You know, I can just dive in, man. I can go deep at the drop of a hat. Whereas like all the small stuff, I really struggle with that. That's like, it doesn't make no sense to me. I struggle to see the point sometimes, you know?
I actually feel that on quite a deep level. And, you know, I'm still at university and that's something that there is a lot of surface level bullshit, so to speak. You know, when you meet someone out, you know, it's very much, so what course do you study? What do you want to do after uni? And for me, like those conversations, I wouldn't say they bring up a social anxiety, but what they do is my brain, it doesn't fascinate me like the same way that a conversation about, so like, what, speaking about your past, what happened then? How did that make you feel? You know, I obviously lost my mum, and it's a very weird thing in a university setting to bring that up, but I have done because I'll talk about it on a constant basis. And the kind of, you know, sometimes there will be that one person at a party who thinks, wow, like, you know, I've gone through this. And yes, I think when you drink, you're more vulnerable and you're more open. But for me anyway, that deeper foundation is just a lot more meaningful and just very much more me. A bit about your, you know, you said your social anxiety. Is this something that, you know, well, I guess there's like, I've got about 5 questions and I'm going to kind of go back because my mind just always wires.
Mate, let's do it.
But so obviously the Proper Mental podcast, what was your foundation? What was your idea? How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, so I kind of I was really poorly with my mental health. I had a breakdown, for want of a better term, in 2016, and at the time I didn't know what mental health was. You know, if you'd have asked me at the time what's depression, I would have said that, oh, that's how lazy people get off work. You know, I was very stoic, very like, you know, no one cares, work harder. That was very much my mindset. And yeah, didn't have a lot of empathy for people who struggled. I certainly didn't have a lot of empathy for myself. And I had this big breakdown. And around about at the time, as I started to work through it, I kind of thought it was postnatal, because it was kind of like triggered by the birth of my son, my first child. And I've since learned from like years of therapy that I'd been struggling with different aspects of my mental health for a long time, you know, probably since my teens, if not before. So that's kind of, that happened. And then I got a bit better. And then I told everyone I was better, and I wasn't. And I pretended I was better, and I wasn't. I had another breakdown a few years later. And off the back of that, I had to come off work. I had to kind of like stop doing everything, really. And I've got a mate who runs a mental health charity. And I have done through my day job, I've done a bit of work for him. And we started meeting up when I started getting back out and seeing people. We started meeting up to talk about this work that I would do for him. And these conversations just turned into the sort of chats that we're having now. You know, they'd go all around the houses, a little bit about me, a little bit about him, a little bit about football, just a bit of everything. And they started to bring me back to life. You know, I really started to look forward to these business meetings. I'd never spoke to anyone other than my wife and my therapist about my mental health. That was it. So to start talking about these things, and I realized how powerful it was and how much it was doing for me. And I quite liked the idea of it. I kind of started thinking like, well, if this is working for me, could it work for other people to hear these types of conversations? And I spoke to my mate Chris, and so we did the first few episodes together. You know, it was like a partnership, and we didn't know what to do with it. I didn't really want to do a podcast. I was like, oh man, two like straight white blokes on a podcast, like, you know, the world's got enough of them, right? We don't really need any more. Very, very reluctant. And then I thought, well, no one's going to listen, so who cares? And we'll just throw it on YouTube and just see kind of what happens. And after the first few episodes, as you know yourself, like it's a lot of work getting these things out. And, you know, so my pal was like, oh, it's a bit too much for me. I don't really want to pursue it. But I was hooked. I had the bug, and it was doing so much for me on a personal level. And I was getting people saying really nice things. And so it kind of grew from there, really. Just this need to talk and to listen more than anything. I always say, my podcast, it certainly isn't about me, and to some extent it's not really about my guests. You know, it's about the conversation, and it's about the people listening. That's the most important factor. You know, I hold the space. That's my job. I hold the space, I create the space, and then hopefully people fall in it, and hopefully as part of that process the people listening really get something out of it.
Yeah, I really feel that, and I think it's an important space, and it's very it's a difficult space. And you know, one thing I've you know, as you know, I'm also equally hooked. These conversations, they give me such enjoyment, and so I guess from a selfish perspective, like it is something that inherently I love doing, but just because like the benefits that I get. But at the same time, I know, as you know, there are people who listen who really value what the discussion. And I think, you know, especially the thing is, it is a very difficult field to be part of, and sometimes, you know, yes, I think also I need to be in the right headspace. I don't know about yourself, but you know, if you know something, if I'm quite grief stricken, or if I'm in an anxious mindset, for me to then speak about that, it can be quite hard. Although at the same time, it's weird, because in a way, this is kind of therapy for me, if that makes somewhat sense. But yeah, I do one thing that you know, you touched on your anxiety, obviously, and your journey with mental health, and it's quite interesting because, you know, when I was what started my I say what started, but you know, my mum had cancer, and she was diagnosed when I was 8 years old, and for a long time that sat with me, but I never really quite knew what it was. I never knew what this. You know, I had severe anxiety in secondary school, but like I never linked it towards what was going on at home. I always, you know, there was this feeling of just, I'd be in school and I'd be so confused and just like, I would hate it, but it was something that was just such a present part of my life. And I think once I addressed it, that there was more understanding. I think that's something that podcasting does. It really addresses what, you know, your past And I find myself in conversations at times and I'm like, wow, like, you know, that makes a lot of sense, that, you know, how I had that feeling, or I interacted in that manner growing up. Kind of going on a tangent here, but like, I think what I do want to know though is like, so how have you found your kind of your mental health? How has that transitioned since the start of your podcasting journey?
That's a great question. Massively, I really identify with what you're saying there. You know, we have these things and we're dealing with these things, and because we deal with them, you know, we don't necessarily think of them as anything that we shouldn't be dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So I actually, when I first started talking about these things, I didn't really have a clue. I really, really didn't. I was just talking and learning on the way. And I now know that I have anxiety, is something that I have to deal with, and I have done for a long, long time. But I didn't realize I had anxiety until I recorded like 10 episodes of my podcast, and I had someone on and they were talking, and I was like, wow, you are describing me. Like what you've just said is me in a nutshell. And then after that, then I could, you know, address that in therapy. I could read some books, you know, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so I've learned loads about myself, you know, loads and loads and loads. And then I understood that. So it's like, oh, okay, now I know how this works, you know. And then you chat to someone else and they mention something and you think, oh, that could be a little bit of me, you know, maybe I'll investigate that. And I like to say with mental health that we all break in different ways, but it's a lot of the same stuff that comes out. You know, so like different things, we go through different things, we experience different things, we all see the world in different ways. But when we talk about that, a lot of what happens because of these things can be quite similar, you know. So anxiety is anxiety. It doesn't matter whether you've got anxiety as a result of trauma or a result of your upbringing or a result of, you know, something that happened in your childhood, but anxiety is still similar, but it's the same but different. So me and you can both talk about anxiety. I know exactly what you mean and you know exactly what I mean, and yet I have no idea what you're experiencing and vice versa. You know, like it's a really really funny space. But you know, I know and you know, and we'll show compassion to each other, but we neither of us actually know, which is, I think, also really nice what I like about
but what I love about that word compassion, I think having you know, something, a mental health fiasco, I don't know what you want to call it, that fiasco, I don't know where that came from.
It's a great word, actually.
Yeah, it is. I've clearly been doing a lot of reading recently. No, but like something I've kind of found is having, you know, being in a position of maybe poor mental health in the past, you develop a sense of compassion for other people. And I think I would say I'm a lot more aware when someone might be going through something difficult, primarily because I've been there myself. You know, as young people, or as a young person, there are, you know, anxiety is through the roof, and you know what it kind of creates is like you want to be able to discuss and you want to be able to share with friends what you're going through. And I think having that sense of compassion and empathy, I've really kind of been able to identify when a friend is you know, needing kind of just a conversation or someone to just like share that with. And I think also like having conversations, it's a sense of like sharing, you know, what you're discussing. It doesn't go away, but it kind of, it halves it. Like, you know, someone knows what you're going through. You're not alone, you're not isolated in your feelings. And I think that's so important, because isolation and mental health, they're like, you know, they feed off each other, you know, and the worst thing that I found was hiding myself and look, you know, being bed stricken, and it kind of exacerbates, like my mental health just goes through the roof when I do that with myself. But so what did your anxiety and what did your kind of depression or you know, mental health, what did that look specifically for you?
Basically, when my son was born, my head exploded. You know, I didn't know I was ill at that point. Plain and simple. Yeah. I always knew, I always felt I was different to everyone. You know, I've always been a softie. I always take stuff on, you know, I always have to be careful what I consume, you know, with regards to the media and social media. And like, I feel other people's pain, you know, I feel the world. That's kind of, that's probably a good way to describe it. So I always knew I was soft. I knew I was an overthinker, you know, and I always felt different. always felt different to my peer groups, to people in my class. I always felt like an outsider. Even when I was pretending to be on the inside, I always was very aware that I was pretending. And I just thought that was me. I just thought I was just an oddball. And yeah, when my son was born, the only way I can describe it, I suppose, is that I'd been living a really inauthentic life for a long, long time. And I'd put on so many different faces and so many different masks for other people. I had no idea what the real me was anymore. I'd completely lost sight of myself. Then when my son was born, and it's just so life-changing in all the obvious ways, like you're not getting any sleep and you've got all this like scary stuff and you don't know what to do, but also in this like big change of identity, because your whole life changes overnight. I'm not Tom anymore, I'm Reese's dad. That's a massive shift.
Yeah.
And it's like my life was so full, there was no room to deal with it. There was because my brain was dealing with all this other shit I've been doing my entire life, not looking after myself, living inauthentically. And then when this big life-changing event happened, I couldn't absorb it. There was no space left in me for anything. And yeah, just my head just exploded. And I started getting really angry, really tearful. I'd cry, like proper cry, but for no reason at all. Really like always on the last notch of my temper, the smallest thing, and I'd just be like blowing up. I started getting really nervous about strange things, like going to the gym, and I'd sit outside the gym in my car. I've been going to the gym for years, and I'd like rehearse the conversations in my head because I was scared about going in, just really like quite bizarre behavior. And it just kind of like spiraled from there, really. I had days where I was just numb and I just didn't feel anything at all. I'd start to kind of question.
I would say that numbness is also just the worst, when it's almost, you don't, feeling sad is one thing, and that's something you'll learn to deal with, but having a sense of numbness, you feel like a robot, you feel like a zombie, kind of not really a person.
Yeah, just disengaged from your life and from your loved ones. And someone, I spoke to a guy called Lee Pennington who runs a local charity. They're doing like amazing stuff in our local community. They're called The Open Door. And Lee's worked in that sector, he worked young people's mental health for a long, long time. And he said, that's the sneaky thing about depression. He said, how are you supposed to know, if you don't feel anything, how are you supposed to know you're depressed?
Yeah.
You're guided by your feelings. But when you feel nothing, how are you supposed to know what it is? And that's one thing that stuck with me. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's why I was depressed for so long and had no fucking idea I was depressed.
Yeah, completely, mate. It's bizarre though, because like I think depression can spring up on you, and unless you have like a sense of we're not trained, and we don't understand all these emotions. There are countless emotions we feel on a daily basis, but you don't inherently look at them. And I think it's a sense of confusion. Definitely for myself growing up, there was I would feel numb to just, I guess, life in a sense, and I remember vividly being at school, and there was a time where a mate, kind of came to me, and this stays in my mind, like this conversation. I think I might have been 13 or 14 at the time. I was really young, but even at that age, I was incredibly numb, and I think I was numb to life because of my circumstances at home. And I never connected the dots. I just thought maybe I was kind of a bit quieter than other people, but in reality, I wasn't quieter, and I'm quite extroverted. But what it was, I had this massive thing at home that wasn't addressed. And because I didn't address it, it culminated and caused me to have this numbness in life. And back to what I was saying, and I was in this one person said to me, and he said something like, you have the personality of a brick. And at the time I thought, I didn't think much of it. I was like, maybe I do. Maybe I have nothing going for me. Maybe all I am is just kind of this, as I said, a zombie, this emotionless person. And then, that made me, I think also when someone at a young age or in general, when someone criticizes you, you kind of take that on board. You're like, well, maybe that is me. Maybe I am. And I think that's the mental health kind of weaving its magic. It's, the anxiety, depression, it like takes that with a pinch of salt and then kind of says, right, that's what he said. And then you are like, it kind of just feeds into your narrative, and then you start thinking that mindset. And I definitely felt in that mindset for a long time that, that it sounds weird. Like I was quite, I was a good athlete, played pro football back in the day, but like, it wasn't like I was isolated, but the fact that, someone at that time, and it's bizarre, like the things you pick up on, and this was a conversation at 14, and it really stayed with me. And, I think one thing that anxiety does, it really likes to just show yourself in like this negative light. And until you address that, and until you say to yourself, right, this isn't me, how am I going to change it? You'll forever be kind of controlled by your fears and your anxiety in a way,
Yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely. And how you talk about yourself is massive, right? How you describe yourself to yourself. You're in a monologue. And mental health problems, no matter what they are, they feed off that, exactly like you say. I always had a really negative self-worth, really, really negative. I didn't do very well at school. And so that, because we, as a society, we use like one metric for everyone. Now we know that the school system doesn't serve everyone, right? Everyone learns in different ways. But when I went to school, it didn't know that. You were either clever or you weren't, right? So I didn't do very well. And rather than saying, well, this system doesn't work for me, it was like, well, I must be thick. So that's what I said. So I'd say that I must be thick. Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. And then because of saying those things, I made choices in my life based on those things. So I would go for shit jobs because I would say, well, I'm thick, so I can't have a good job. So then I'd not only be telling myself I was thick, I'd have a job I hated, right? And so that's another thing. And then you go, oh, I hate this job. I've got to do this for the rest of my life. And that would all just feed this narrative, this inner hatred, And then you look for reasons. You pick up on your own failures. You get caught in this negative loop. Anytime you do something wrong, rather than just laugh it off, I might laugh it off in public and then I'd beat myself up. And how I talked to myself was terrible. If I was in the gym and I'm really trying to move something or do something, instead of being like, oh, come on, you can do this, I'd be like, come on, you fucking pussy. It was always like talking down, always negative, laying it on. It was never like a pat on the back. And I was being in a therapy session once and I was talking about this and my self-talk. And my therapist said, and like now I've seen this saying so many places, it's almost a cliche. And he said to me, well, how would you feel if someone else spoke to you like that? And I was like, oh, I'd feel awful. I'd feel sad. I'd be upset. I'd be angry. And he said, well, why are you doing it to yourself? Yeah. And like, that was a moment for me where a little cloud lifted. And I was like, right, now I have to learn to be kinder to myself.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier, going through this stuff makes us show compassion for other people. Well, you can't show compassion for others unless you can show compassion for yourself, right? So when you learn to show compassion for you, then naturally you're going to be more compassionate for other people. That has to happen. I don't know why it works. I'm sure there's science. I'm sure there's a therapist who could say why, but it does. It happens. That's what fucking happens.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I think, we really feed for someone with anxiety, or I think a lot of people in general, we look for that negativity. We look for those negative comments kind of reinforce what we're going through. I think it's very easy and like a sense of comfort to kind of agree, like that sense of agreeableness where you just say, right, this is me. Like I can't change that. I'm an anxious person. I'm this negative self-talk. It's what is inherently hard is to just kind of notice it and change that pattern. But once you identify it, and once I think it's a sense of, for me anyway, it was definitely a sense of wanting, a sense of almost not accepting this was who I was, and this was who I am, and don't get me wrong, like this negativity still comes, that self-doubt. I think that's a part of being human. There will forever be there are weird times where I've said something at a party and then I'm in the car or in the shower on the way back, I'm like, why did I say that? Like, what was that about? Like, that wasn't funny. I didn't get any laughs. But I think that's just a part of being human. So you kind of that's normal. But I think it's when that thought and those kind of actions really cause your life to change. That's when it becomes a problem. Like, you said yourself, you were going for jobs that you felt you were worth. Well, you weren't worth that. That's not who you are. But because you were telling yourself that, you kind of limited your capacity and your full potential. And I think that's something I've manage to kind of rationalize that, like, these thoughts want to limit you. They're there to push you down and compress you to your nothing. They want to, but if you don't let that happen, you know, you can kind of deal with it. You know, what kind of techniques or what kind of ways and methods have you kind of noticed to you know, to handle those negative thoughts and kind of, yeah.
I mean, I've done a lot of therapy, so it's very easy for me to sit and say a lot of these things, you know, and I always have to be really, really careful with the mental health conversation, because you don't want to say anything. Mental health is it's fragile and it's precious, and depending on where people are in their journey, what you say and how you say it can really like trigger people, you know. So without going into anything too direct tips, because what works for me won't work for others, but
no, of course,
just having an awareness, you know, having an awareness. So I still say those things about myself, but I know I'm doing it, you know, and I might say it and then catch myself afterwards and be like, oh, come on, fella. Do you know what I mean? It's not that bad. Cheer up, mate, you know, and like give myself a little pat on the back. And it's just having an awareness to step back. It's all that Buddha stuff, man. Like, you know, you are not your thoughts and all that, you know, you are the awareness. But just take a step back and go, all right, okay, I know what this is, you know, it's not very nice. And I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to just kind of feel it play out rather than try and ignore it. You know, I'm not going to pick my phone up and just start hammering Instagram to try and distract myself. You know, I'm not going to go and grab a bar of chocolate out the fridge and just emotionally suppress it with food. I'm just going to be aware that this is going on, and you know, that's okay. That's all right. You know, how you said it before was really good about it's part of being human, having these thoughts and these feelings, you know, and these thinking back to what you said at the party and all the rest of it. And I always think people think when you're struggling with your mental health or with mental illness that it's like a madness, you know, like it's just some bizarre, stereotypical lunatic behavior, but it's not. It's the same thoughts, the same feelings that everyone has. They're just on steroids. You just don't have control over them. So what you were saying about thinking back to the joke you made at the party that didn't land, that's completely normal. But when that thought was on steroids and that becomes something that's like giving you panic attacks and, you know, it's going that deeper level, that's when it becomes a problem. So it's just being a human. It's taking all your flaws and ramping them up. I know I got totally away from what you originally asked.
But like that, I think that's what podcasting's all about, though, isn't it? Because you start with one conversation, and 2 minutes later we're talking about Game of Thrones. Like that is just a natural part of. But like that's also why I love doing this, because I don't want to create like a you know, just have like kind of forced questions. I want it to seem like an authentic chat, and I think that's kind of, you know, what we need to kind of showcase that. Like talking about mental health, it doesn't need to be like a sad topic. It can be a sense of understanding. Like I come out of each conversation, I'm like, right, Tom said something that I really rationalized, I'm really got, you know, how can I then put that into my life? And that's not to say that everyone who listens will feel in that manner, because, you know, mental health is so unique. It's not one size fits all. We all have our own journey and our own battle, and we all deal with what it is we face it in our own ways. But for myself, it you know, I really kind of listen and deeply kind of take on what people say, because I kind of, and I think that's why I read a lot. I read a lot around the mental health space, and sometimes it's a load of shit. Sometimes I'm thinking, you know, this is just, you know, a money grabbing book where someone just had a few, you know, but then sometimes I read it and I'm like, this is, how can I implement this into my life? And you know, it's hard to constantly and I think also one thing I've noticed myself doing, I don't know how you've done it, but you've got me talking too much, but yeah, like one thing I notice myself doing a lot is analyzing it. That, I think, you know, that over analytical sense of just kind of looking deeply at everything. Is that something you kind of notice yourself doing, or do you have like does your mental health differ in that respect?
No, I get that totally. Yeah, I'm a massive overthinker. I can go down a rabbit hole on stuff. I have to physically stop myself, and that's all anxiety. That's me trying to have control. That's me trying to know every drop of information in existence about the thing that I'm trying to look into.
Yeah.
That's my way of like trying to gain control of the situations. And it's very difficult for me to just accept that something just is, I know I'm always a searcher. And now that's something I've had to learn to do, podcasting's been huge for that. I have a conversation and it might not have gone the way I wanted to, but that's the conversation. If we did this last week or in a month's time, it would be completely different. It might be better, it might be worse. We'll never know, right? So you just record it, you put it out, boom, it's out in the universe, and you just got to accept it. And that's what I've had to learn to do. But yeah, massively overthinking, and I've took a lot of stuff in my life that's supposed to be fun and made it really not fun because I have to be good at stuff and I have to be.
What do you mean by that?
Anything like hobbies, I play guitar I started playing guitar in my teens, and I played it till I was in my early 30s, and then I just went down this rabbit hole on it, and I was like, right, I've been playing too long now, I'm going to get really fucking good, like slash good, and then I just like I get so stressed with it and so annoyed, and there'd be none of the feeling, none of the flow. You can't like force these things. Different gym programs I've done over the years, and I've learned to, like, I don't commit to much stuff. People ask me to do stuff all the time, and I just say no, because I know that if it gets under my skin, I will move heaven and earth, even if it's detrimental to me to make it happen. Like if I say I'm going to do something, put your mortgage on it because it'll fucking happen. There's no doubt in my mind. But I can do that to like loads of things and loads of things that don't matter all at the same time. That's the problem with it, right? So I've had to learn to channel that overthinking, channel that, that drive, channel that need to have control and be perfect, and just channel it into like a few things rather than.
I was going to say, would you say it's like a sense of like perfectionism? Because from what it sounds like, I've definitely, in that manner, I think there's a sense of like, I want to be the best I can in whatever it is I do. And sometimes, for example, like, even now, I'm playing football, but not at a level I once played. But, now I think when you think of shit in that manner, it really takes away the enjoyment and the fun. You're like, you could be playing with your mates at Power League, and I'm saying to myself, fuck's sake, Bellman, like your fitness is terrible. Like I'm like playing with my mates, 3 of them are overweight, and I'm like, well, like relax, like this is who you are, enjoy it, like enjoy the moment, enjoy that, just enjoy playing with your mates. But when you have that sense of, my nose is really itchy and it's annoying me, like I don't know what's going on. It's just this side of my nose. It's bizarre. Because maybe I did like this exfoliating mask last night with my sister. I thought it would be a good idea, but I really didn't like it.
I did think your skin was glowing this morning, mate. When you logged on, I was like,
cheers, mate.
He's exfoliated or he's got a good ring light.
Yeah, no, it's probably the latter, mate. Got about 3 lights up, and I'm sweating. The light is absolutely sweating, mate. But I don't even know what I was talking about, to be honest. But I know.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, perfectionism. And I think when there's nothing wrong with being, wanting to do well and be the best at what you do. But I think it's also when it takes, when at the point where it takes away, your enjoyment for that area is when you've got to realize, why am I doing this? I'm not. So it's just a conversation you need to have with yourself, and it can kind of devalue what it is you enjoy. Like you said, you go to the gym. Like, well, this is a kind of different question, but like, what is your purpose for going to the gym? Like, why do you go? Do you go for mental health? Do you go to better yourself? Like, what reason do you go?
Mental health a lot. And I work my day job. So I coach, I'm a mobility coach. So in my day job, I kind of have one foot in the fitness industry as well. So my main training focuses basically around longevity and around like movement capacity. So being able to move my body strongly through full ranges of motion, so I'm not interested in like getting lean or getting hench, but I want to be able to be, strong and bendy, basically. So my training kind of feeds that, because that's what I do. That's my job.
Strong and bendy.
Yeah.
Nice. Bit of yoga. You even
Kind
tried
of,
that?
yeah. I'm a yoga teacher.
Oh, really? That's incredible.
Yeah. So I teach a type of yoga. I trained with a lady called Sarah Ramsden, who's a very well-known yoga teacher, but she worked at like Manchester United and Manchester City.
Oh, wow. That's sick.
Man. She used to like teach for Ronaldo and stuff, man. It's really
No
cool.
way.
So it's like a really functional anatomy-based type of
So
yoga.
she's gone from teaching Ronaldo to teaching yourself, traiing you, mate.
That's it. Yeah,
two prime athletes.
I know. And some people would say she's got up in the world, but but it's a really like functional type of yoga. So sometimes with yoga, like I say, strong and bendy. Sometimes yoga's just bendy, and your body don't want to be bendy because bendy things break. So you want to be strong within that bendiness. So my yoga is like a really functional type of yoga. It's basically around strength, but strength in the right places. I go to the gym for that. That's my primary purpose. And for my mental health, because it keeps me ticking over. It's a good energy release for me. It's a good way of an hour to myself and to kind of like get some anger out, man, get in touch with with that side of things, let things go a bit.
You've touched on anger a few times. What is that like specifically? Like what does that mean for you? Being like, how does that manifest?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I mentioned before that I kind of struggled with having different faces for different people.
Yeah.
So I would suppress parts of me, different parts of my personality, different emotions, and I'd do that for suppress different parts for different things and for different people. So I have a lot of trouble recognizing emotions and recognizing feelings. That's something that I have to work on really hard in my therapy. I sometimes don't know how I feel about stuff. It's my brain's natural way. It just switches off. It just like cuts out. I have real trouble like really like letting go of myself. So like things like crying is like, I'm incredibly stoic. I buried the ability to do that for so long. I can't do it. Just letting stuff out, shouting really loud. Like, I don't know if I could. I really don't know if I could stand in now and just go, a proper one, from the belly, but when I'm in the gym, if I can lift up something heavy, if I can, grip a barbell hard and squeeze and lift it and, like really kind of access a bit of rage, then I can kind of channel some of these things. For me, it was, I've a really like disconnect to how I feel and how I experience emotions.
Yeah, and was some of that in relation to, well, you said postnatal depression, but was that somewhat in relation to that, or am I just trying to connect dots that aren't even there?
Yeah, so like no, it's so at first I thought I had postnatal depression just because it happened after the birth of my son, but then I kind of learned that it wasn't. That was a trigger. And it just happened to coincide with that was the so a best way to describe it is like having a crack in your windscreen, and you kind of spot it and you go like, I really must get that sorted, and then you forget, and you drive around for another 6 months, and then it gets a bit bigger and you go like, I really must get that fucking sorted, and then you carry on, and then next thing you know, you're driving down a motorway and your windscreen goes well, that was my mental health story. There was so many little cracks in the windscreen. I didn't know to say I should get that fixed. It was like, that's a bit weird. I must be a weirdo. I know. I'll hide that from everyone. I will never speak of this. No one will ever find out that just happened. And then eventually, so when my son was born, that's what kicked the windscreen in, basically. Yeah.
Weird. That analogy, I quite like it, but only reason I like it is because I currently have a scratch on my little crack on my windscreen that I've been saying I need to get fixed, and maybe this is like a sign from the gods that
I think so.
Get on that. So weird question. Well, not weird question. A weird question would be, what's your favorite type of beans? But that's not what I'm going to ask.
Carry on.
No, I was going to say, so what does happiness, what does that look like for you? What does that mean? If you were like, I'm feeling like happiness, what does it mean for you?
Yeah, I've got a funny perspective on happiness. It's not something I particularly chase myself. I kind of see happiness as like all the other emotions. We're not designed to live in them. You're not designed to be happy all the time, same as you're not designed to be sad all the time, right? It's a fleeting emotion. It arrives, you feel it, you enjoy it, and you learn from it and move on. So all the usual stuff probably makes me happy, that makes everyone else happy. You know, my search within my life, I always trying to find ways to be content, you know, to be content, just to have enough, you know, just to have enough of everything, not stuff, but, you know, enough love, enough connection, enough health, just enough. And if you're content, you can be sad and come back to a place of contention, and it's like, or come back to being content, and that's like a really safe space to come back to, and you can enjoy happiness. You know, you can be really, really happy, and then when that happiness wears off, instead of like crashing down into the depth because you're chasing that happiness all the time, and then it's not there because it's not supposed to be there, then just being content. And that's what I want from life, is just to kind of look around and go, do you know what, like, my kids are happy and healthy, my wife's happy and healthy, you know, we're doing some cool stuff. I like my job, my podcast. I like my podcast. I've got nice people around me. That's content, man. That's just to look around and go, yeah, I've got enough. You know, what's that quote? That happiness is wanting what you've already got. You know, like, I think that's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, I quite like that word content, because I think we're always, you know, you can always search for more, you know, definitely in this capitalist society, you're always wanting more, you're always looking for the next best thing. But I think with happiness, you can't really do that, because you can't, if you continuously search for more, you'll never just be, as you put it, content. And, you know, that sense of just like understanding that, you know, happiness is an emotion. It comes and it goes, and it's in a wave, just like sadness, just like you know, anxiety, and like anything, it's just an emotion. I don't think you can really just like search for it, because when you put all this value and all this, you know, kind of pressure on happiness, you know, when you actually are feeling happy and something amazing happens, you know, you're like, well, if I'm constantly, you know, it will devalue and take away from that idea of what it actually means to be happy, because you're constantly searching for more. You're searching like, how can I you know, improve it? And so I like that sense of content, because, you know, it's important to just be okay. You know, why can't we just be okay? Why, you know, being just, you know, very okay with what's going on, why is that a bad thing, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very, very much so. It's it's important to me to just be okay. Yeah, I think that's really really, really important. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I read a book, it's more about grief, but it's called It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And, you know, something that I kind of really got from that book is like, sometimes just like, it's slightly different, I guess, because it was more so, you know, feeling kind of negative and feeling unhappy, like, that's fine. And, you know, obviously this mic's really kind of in my face, but just like this big thing, like, I like how yours is placed. I really need to kind of master my placement, because it's like you can only see like half my head. But yeah, no, I definitely do you find reading like material, do you find that helpful for your kind of your journey?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of I like in both types. So I like non-fiction. I like to learn, you know, I like to kind of grow in that way. And I really love fiction as well. You know, that's really good escapism for me. It's so much healthier than, you know, scrolling on your phone and watching telly and all that stuff. So I'm a big reader. I tend to kind of have 2 books on the go. So I'll always be reading something fiction, and I'll also always be reading something non-fiction. Or like pretentious reading, as I call it. But yeah, it's important. You learn a lot from books, you know, but again, I have to be in the right place. So now I've got much more understanding of how my mind works. But before, when I was poorly and I was looking for answers, I'd go on Amazon and buy 10 books and just read them all and be like, well, I'm still sick. What's like this book? Everyone said this book worked. Everyone said this book will change your life. I read it. I still fucking hate myself. Maybe it's me. It must be me. Everyone else who read this book said it really helped them, you know? So I'd use that as like a stick to beat myself. But I was having a conversation with someone the other day about this, and he was saying that when we read a lot of self-help, to resist the urge to apply it all. And he was saying, just let it soak in. And then one day in the future, it might be a week, it might be 6 months, it might be a year, a situation presents itself, and then you react to it differently, or you handle it differently because of the information. And he was talking about the need for people like devour all these books and try and implement everything straight away. And I really identified with that. That would be something else that I'd be guilty of, read a book that has a big effect and saying, right, I'm just going to change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so fundamentally true. I think, we're especially something that I can relate to, because you constantly, well, again, speaking from experience, but I'm constantly trying to, implement things into my life. But sometimes it's okay to just have that, surface level. Like, yeah, I've read this, someone's given me this information, but like, just let it be, let it sit on you. Like, there might be a time and a place where that comes in handy. You don't need it. So I really do like that, because I think there is definitely a truth in the sense that, the amount of books and TED Talks I might have listened to, and then I think, right, how am I gonna put all of this into my life? But it's impossible. You can't put everything you learned into your life, because that's just, you wouldn't be living. You'd be like kind of putting this from that book, and then this person said you can't watch TV more than 3 hours a day, and then this person said you can watch TV, but it has to be, but so it's like, you can't do that. But there will be a time where you kind of hear something that makes sense to you. And I don't get me wrong, I think it's so important to read, because you're constantly expanding your field of knowledge, and not just from a mental health perspective. It could be on absolutely anything, but I think the common ground is to know that you can't constantly implement everything into your life, and why would you want to? You sometimes it's just nice to have a different perspective, but it doesn't mean you've got to have that. It's like, for example, when you hear about, I hate this field actually so much, but when you hear these billionaires, like what they do to become successful, now they why sleep more than 2 hours a day, because work, money never sleeps. And like, some of that is just so toxic as well. I think if you believe everything you say, that for someone with mental health and anxiety can definitely feed into that narrative. I'm someone who does want to be successful. What that success means is something that constantly changes in my mind. But I think sometimes, just when you feed into, I don't know, how do you find that culture? Like, I find it a lot on Instagram, and I think I've kind of been like, social media has been something that's been part of my life. I don't know how old you are. I'm gonna say no, I actually do know how old you are, because I heard it on your podcast. But I've grown up with that. I think this sense of social media and has definitely fed into like a sense of like toxic masculinity. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, very much so, man. Like, hustle culture is I just think it's bullshit. Like, success is, it's up to you to individually decide what your version of success looks like. So for me, I can't think of anything worse than having loads of money. I've never had loads of money. I don't want it. There'd be too much problems with it. I don't need it. I don't want to live that life. Me and my wife always joke, and we say, if we won the lottery, we wouldn't even like move. I don't want to go and live with a load of posh people. I'd hate my neighbors. Like, I'm not from that world. Like, I'm not designed to live in that world. And success is whatever you want it to be. And when you see like people like Gary V, and it's all like, hustle, how bad do you want it, and all that, I think, mate, you look like you need a kip. You look like you need a fucking rest, mate. It looks like shit. Yeah. And I just think that it's whatever you want it to be. And if it kind of doubles back to what we were talking about happiness before, man, if you're always chasing something, what are you going to miss along the way? When you started your podcast, you had a few ideas about what you wanted it to be, and then you learned all this stuff on the journey, and if you'd have just been focused on that end product, you wouldn't have learned all this cool stuff. You read a book and it's like, right, how do I need to read all these books and I need to apply all this information. Well, while you're trying to apply that information, what are you going to miss along the way? Whenever we're driving for stuff, we miss the stuff around us, and sometimes the best things in life come like from the little side roads we go down without meaning to, rather than just focusing on the destination. You get lost and find a different path that looks a lot better than the one you were just on, and you just don't know where you're going to end up. And you get this idea of success. Where does that come from? Society, social media, the fucking, like, it's just ingrained in us, man, and it's like none of it means anything. None of it if you want to really get into it, none of it fucking exists. It's just a concept, right? So yeah, like I certainly have no desire for any of that sort of stuff. I want a nice, quiet little content life where I just like tick along, and that's success for me. That's very much so.
And I think that's so important to kind of know what that success means for you. And if that success is kind of that corporate lifestyle and that that 6 to 9 job where you're just working in finance, and great, but that doesn't need to be for everyone. That can be your kind of path, and like for some people to earn as much money as possible. But also you got to think about it as well, and like sometimes when at what cost does money buy happiness, and at what cost working all these hours. I've got a few friends who are working in in the banking industry and are working serious hours, and yeah, sure, they're getting great grad scheme payment, but like, does money buy happiness? You've got to put I definitely put a precedent on time, spending time with family and friends, and like, I think also for someone with mental health, I think being in like a very intense, stressful job, that couldn't be for, like, not that jobs are stressful, but a very, I think, pressurized job where if you make a mistake, that could be that's something that I don't think I could handle. And it's something that it's okay, that's who you are. You find an industry, you find something that fits the kind of person you are. And I think before I was definitely on a path where I thought, I didn't know. Well, I guess I still don't. I'm still young. I'm still deciding what it is that, are fine. But I think it's very important to kind of listen to your heart and listen to like the path and like about the journey and stuff. This, like, I would never have found this. Like, this has come out of pain. Like, this podcast, and I'm sure the same for yourself. It's come out of something that was an inherently difficult time, and like you never assume. Like, I never thought this would be what would happen. It started, and then each time I'm like, oh, why, I quite enjoy this. It's quite healing chatting to people. I don't know, do you find that? Do you find it's
it's very much so. It's like it is being human, isn't it? Connecting on a deeper level. We're not designed to know what everyone's doing all the time on social media. We're not. We come from tribes. Inherently, our brain is still a tribe brain. And the tribe would have like anywhere up to maybe 100 people in it tops. I can't remember the stat, but there's a thing, isn't it? Like, you're only designed to know X amount of people. And but we know what everyone's doing. We know what people are gonna. Just celebrity culture. We know what all these people are doing. Why does anyone care? Why does anyone care? It's just so strange, and I've kind of like I've lost your point there.
You're just like you're just hating the social media celebrities, just going on a rant. I'll let you rant away, mate.
Oh, mate, yeah, but yeah, what was your question, mate?
I said about just chatting to people is quite healing.
It's connecting on that deeper level, and that's where I was getting lost. It's because all these things are designed to distract us from that, so social media and knowing all the surface level stuff about people, but connecting on a deeper level, it's what we're supposed to do. You look at these tribes people, and there's people out there now, isn't there, like these untouched tribes in the Amazon and stuff like that, and they've got to feed themselves, and they've got to go looking for food, and they've got to do all this stuff, but other than that, what have they got to do, man? They just chill, and what do you do when you chill? You talk. They're not they're not putting on Netflix to chill. They're not like getting their phones out or anything. They're just sat around just chatting, and it's how we connect, I think, and it's how we grow, and it's an important part of being a human being, and it's an important part of healing, man. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, agreed. And you mentioned Netflix there, and I think also in the 21st century we have more options, we have more choice than ever, and that choice can sometimes bring on, I can find myself watching, hours and hours of content because it's there at my service. It's not like I don't have to wait a week between each episodes. I mentioned Game of Thrones. I've watched about 3 seasons in like 5 days, and sometimes I'm thinking, why am I doing that? don't like myself doing it, but because it's there at your disposal, and you know, you're like, oh, go on then. You're like you're feeding that sense of like, I don't know if it's like a serotonin boost. I don't know, but it's like that anticipation because it's there, it's at your service. You can just easily sit through. I don't know where I'm going with this point, but I think it's just kind of that idea that, like, you know, there's so much options and so much to provide ourselves right now. Like we don't like the idea of just sitting and kind of connecting with other people and connecting with your thoughts is kind of like so far removed, because it's like, you know, there's so much going on around us. It's like, right, after this, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do, but like very rarely do I ever kind of just sit down. And I think kind of that's what yoga does in a way. Like I know my dad does that quite a lot, like meditates, and well, I don't know if he meditates, but he does yoga. And the benefits that I've seen in him are kind of astronomical, in the sense that kind of he's definitely more in touch with himself as a person because of just those kind of yoga positions, the tree, or I don't know what you're probably better at the human tree. Is that a position?
It probably is, yeah. I would say to people I work with, like, your body doesn't know what a tree is, so it doesn't matter, you know. It doesn't, it's just a position someone made up. It's irrelevant. But yeah, I get what you're saying, man. Society is designed to distract us from our thoughts and feelings, you know. So if you've got something going on and you don't want to deal with it, it's really, really easy to go, I'll just watch a bit more Netflix, I'll just eat another McDonald's, I'll just go on my phone, you know, I'll just, like, whatever it is. But there's a million ways to distract us from actually recognizing what's going on, and that can be fine short term, you know. Like, coping mechanisms are there to help us cope, but they're not there to help us cope forever. So I'm a big fan of like really crappy TV. And if I'm feeling a bit kind of rough, you know, like I'm in a bit of a storm and I think I need to get out of my own head, then I'll throw something on. You know, you don't always need to work. You don't always need to be grinding on yourself, you know, and I'll just watch a couple of hours of some absolute nonsense where I don't have to think, you know, a bit of reality TV or something. Love a bit of maths, Australia, me. And I'll just throw that on and I'll just switch off to it, you know, and I'll just kind of enjoy that. And that'll give me the distraction I need. And that's fine because I'm in control of it and I'm aware of it. But it's when your whole life is built around it, which was me before, you know, which would be before I had a breakdown. And my life was built to distraction, you know, football and watching films and, you know, doing all these different things. But it was all to stop me having to spend any time getting to know me. You know, it was all just blockers to the truth, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Naked Attraction?
Oh, mate, yeah. I know of it. I've seen a couple of them, but that's the weirdest thing.
Oh, it's so bizarre. I don't know. I watched it as a uni house like 2 weeks ago. I don't know what we were doing. It was just kind of like late at night, and we were like, "What could we?" Someone suggested Naked Attraction. It's just bizarre. It's a very uncomfortable watch when you're with 4 other guys.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it, man? Yeah, and you know, like, it's been going for ages. There's loads of them, so like people must like it because it keeps getting recommissioned. But yeah, man, I don't know.
If my love life ever fails, maybe I'll give it. I'll consider it.
Maybe that's the way to go. Yeah,
possibly. But yeah, honestly, mate, thank you so much for joining me today. Like, obviously, I know you're, you know, getting these done is I just really appreciate having like conversations like this in general. I think they're amazing. Like, obviously, like, you know, I feel so good off them because I just, you know, I'm sharing something with, like, we don't really know each other, but like, it's just kind of, we can have this conversation. And then, like, thank you so much for just like joining me and sharing some of your truth. I really appreciate it.
Oh, mate, thank you for asking me, man. Yeah, it's a really, I love what you're doing. It's awesome. And to be a part of it is a real privilege, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you again. Honestly, mate, absolute pleasure. And speak to you soon.
Catch you soon, mate.
I just want you to find your truth and stick to it. I know you'll be okay. I know it. From the bottom of my heart, I know it. I love you, Papa.